All right, so give everybody a minute to get seated. We'll get started. It's a little bit past 6 o'clock. I'm coming through all right, Chris? Good. All right, so thank you everybody for coming tonight. This is actually it's the third installment of this, bringing everybody together, which I hope you found to be productive. For those people who are watching at home or here, in the process, one of the things that always happens is after the school committee votes a number, I would traditionally go around and I go before the board of selectmen, I go before the FinCom of each of the towns, so 6 different meetings, sometimes not all of them. And they've looked at the binder, they ask questions, we kind of give an overview of what's going on. And I think this year so far, last meeting you got a whole bunch of what happens, what's been going on academically, where things are class-wise, and some of the challenges we're facing. So here we are today, less than 24 hours after the school committee just voted a number. And again, for everyone who's new to this, typically we get the governor's budget sometime, so I think it's the third Thursday of January. But with the new governor, there's an extension, and that one came in February 28th, which was exactly a day or two before it was required to be here. So not a lot of time to get that information. So thank you all for being here tonight. Really, really appreciate it. I think we'll start now. Is there a microphone we've got going around? Here we go. All right. So we're going to start just by doing some introductions. So if you do, we'll start right here. We'll go this way. If you just introduce your name, your town, and your position.
My name is Melissa Baker. I'm from Groveland and I serve on the Finance Board.
Sarah McGrath from Groveland, Vice Chair of the Finance Board.
I'm Ruth Rivard from Groveland and I'm on the Finance Board.
I'm Jim Scanlon from Groveland and I'm on the Finance Board.
Rebecca Oldham, I'm the Town Administrator with the Town of Groveland.
I'm Walter Meister from West Newbury Finance Committee.
I'm Angus Jennings, the Town Manager in West Newbury.
Dave Archibald, Select Board, West Newbury.
Wendy Reed, West Newbury Select Board.
Chris Weil, West Newbury Finance Committee.
Rob Phillips, West Newbury FinCom.
Jim Spiralakis, West Newbury Finance Committee.
Dan Ennis, West Newbury Finance Committee.
Ross Capilupo, West Newbury Finance Committee.
Rick Parker, West Newbury Select Board.
Mike Martin, Merrimack FinCom.
David Lowman, Merrimack FinCom.
Marcia Zozak, Merrimack FinCom.
And Bob Ledger, Merrimack FinCom.
Carol McLeod, Town Administrator, Merrimack.
James Archibald, Merrimack FinCom.
Tom Ackerman, Merrimack FinCom. Rob Gustafson, Merrimack FinCom.
Joel Green, Merrimack Board of Selectmen.
Chris Manning, Merrimack Select Board.
Ben Bolia, Merrimack Board of Selectmen.
Kathy Castellanos, Groveland Board of Selectmen.
Jason Aves, Groveland Select Board.
All right, so thank you all for being here this evening. Really appreciate it. I believe we have a few public comments, and so first up, Kristen Potter.
Good evening. We good?
You're good.
Okay. Kristen Potter, I'm from Groveland. I have 3 children. My son is 6th grade at the Bagnell, and I have boy-girl twins who are 5th grade at the Bagnell. Last night I spoke to the school committee meeting about the importance of providing our students with the Pentucket education that they deserve. I'm here tonight to speak to you about the same task at hand. This is not a yes/no question, rather, how do we make this work so that our students receive the best education with Pentucket that we can make available to them? The past 12 months have shown us the impact of a failed override that it has on our district. Larger class sizes, increased fees, and limited services to our students do not lend well to the level of education our district has the potential to deliver to our students. It's imperative that our budget increase passes. We are not only behind financially because of the events of last year, we are behind in what we can offer and at the rate in which we can continue to develop our standards year after year. Expenses are rising and state aid is minimal, so it is reasonable to expect the cost of our communities to increase every year. During the last joint meeting, a selectman asked if the trend line of requesting a Prop 2.5 would continue year after year, and whether this would be a perpetual problem if growth is not curtailed. My question to the town officials here tonight is, do you factor that inflation rate in when putting together your budget? And if so, why is the school budget any different? I'm frustrated that education is not given the attention it deserves. Groveland, West Newbury, and Merrimack are towns that families want to live in. Pentucket is a district people want to be a part of. We need to be proud of the value we offer to our students and our families within our community. I urge you to make a commitment to our students and families and to provide them with the district and education you can truly be proud of. Thank you.
And I believe that there's one group here. We have Chelsea, Noel, and Ryan Weaver. Might have to make an adjustment here.
Okay, so I'm Chelsea Weaver, and this is my daughter,
Noel.
and Noelle is in
Kindergarten.
at what school?
Bagnell.
And we live in Groveland. So Noelle and I were looking at a page that we saw in the report that compares how much money people spend on their students in different towns and how much they spend on students in our towns. And Noelle had some feelings about it.
It made me feel sad. Well, what made me feel sad is because some of the other kids got more money in different towns, but we got paid less. And that made me feel sad, and it felt like it wasn't fair.
So what would you like?
I would like if we all had the same amount of money to be paid.
Good job. Do you want to say anything else?
Yeah.
Oh, she has more to say.
I'm gonna talk. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm Noelle's dad, and I am not going to do as good of a job as she did. But when we moved to Groveland 8 years ago, one of the main reasons we chose this community was due to the strong regional school system that we have here. And you know, after having Noelle and subsequently having her enter the school system, we were excited to see the construction of the new high school, things really seeming to be moving in a real positive direction. Since then, it seems like things have gotten less competitive. You know, we've already seen one override come before the town, potential of another one. It just feels like maybe we're prioritizing other things over having smaller class sizes, robust STEM programs, and a variety of extracurriculars for our students, like Noelle, to look forward to in the future. And as somebody who's made a career in robotics, I know firsthand that we still have huge opportunity for young talent coming into that industry, and it promises big job opportunities. The reason why I mention it is because when I hear things like new projects like the robotics program that is just being kicked off, not having a future because we're not putting the priority there. It makes me very concerned. These are the kind of things that we looked for and that others look for when deciding whether to stay in or to join this community and make it thrive. So let's make sure to put our school system as a top priority when considering how we allocate this budget, instead of putting the school system in an unpredictable budget position every year. Thank you.
All right, so I am Chelsea Weaver. I'm a resident of Groveland, and I have one daughter, Noelle. She's far more eloquent than I am, but it is what it is. Noelle is very lucky to receive a wonderful level of special education from the Pentucket School District. We have never, ever, ever, ever had a problem with the special education services. They've gone above and beyond anything that I could dream of. So I do want to make it publicly known that whenever we go see some of her specialists at Boston Children's and at Spalding, they look at the services she has and the amount of teachers that she has access to and all the wonderful things that she has available to her. And they are astounded at how well she is being taken care of. And when last year the override came and we lost an educator in the kindergarten, it was the first time it really actively impacted her. So I'm looking at, this budget again this year and thinking, well, what comes next? She already lost one, so now what's gonna happen when she goes into first grade? Is this going to be continual? She has a class size of an integrated class, which means there are also a lot of students with other disabilities in her class, of 20 for one teacher. That's a lot when you have, likely half your class that it also has some sort of disability. So there's one para, and that's wonderful, she's amazing, but to expect that year after year after year, that's a lot on the teaching staff. So even if teachers aren't cut, it's also going to be a problem if we can't add the teachers that we cut last year back. So it's unsustainable. I come here and I really hope that we can get across how important it is to us for the staff level, or the current level of staffing to maintain what it is and also recover what we had last year. Thank you for your time, thank you for your hard work, I appreciate it, and thank you.
So thank you very much to the Weavers. Thank you very much, Ms. Potter. One thing that just got mentioned there, and you'll notice if you know me, sometimes I just go with what's been said, and we can work through it that way. But I want to make it very clear to everyone here. When you hear the term special education is not an enemy. Right? All children, not certain groups of children, all children deserve the best education. So when you hear about the cost of special education, it's not the fault of that family, it's not the fault of the child. The funding is the fault of who's supposed to provide the funding. And I would argue in many instances that funding is not supposed to come from Groveland, West Newbury, Merrimack, but in some instances that funding should be coming directly from the state, particularly with a group of children who have never been in a school, because it ends up not being an educational issue, it ends up being a medical issue. But that's a health insurance versus state debate, and I'll stay right out of that one. So here's the budget. This budget number was voted last night, and there's two parts, right? So you all would be familiar with this. There's the operational budget. That's everything we spend in 1 year. So that operational budget number, $45,057,522. That's the operational. So the bus shows up to pick up the children. So we paid for the bus, we paid for the bus driver, we paid for the gas. Then the children come to school. So you have the heat that runs the school, you have the breakfast, you have the cafeteria workers, the teachers, everybody that's in the school building. Then after school, you have the extracurricular activities, the bus going on, all that. Every single day. That's what that pays for, the operational budget. And then, of course, the capital budget. So those are all building projects that also get added in. When you add those two numbers together, the total proposed budget that was approved last night by the school committee, $50,720,090. So, yes?
Just to be clear, the capital budget all override or any of those costs inside the population?
So the question is, are all those capital, are those all budget overrides?
Right, first fund.
No.
No.
Could we get the breakdown?
It should be given to the finance directors already. I mean, I don't have the breakdown on me, because I'm not sure. Some towns did override the projects and some just did them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay,
Like,
so,
for example, Bagnell. Bagnell has a $6 million front, but not all of it was an override. 500 was, one of it wasn't. I know it, Kathy, I was one of it.
So just to be clear, this is Greg LeBrecq of the audience, he's the business manager answering the business question.
Yeah, so I mean, like, West Newbury paid some things straight up. The green repair projects, I think one was an override and one 2008. So it varies throughout the things, like your finance directors know, based upon their reviews of their debt exclusion sheets when they turn it to the state, what's debt excluded and what's not. So that's the entirety of what we pay. Each individual town's share of it depends on them, what's debt excluded and what's not.
I wasn't looking for individual towns, I think it's useful to know how much of that budget is being funded inside the Prop 2.5. So part of the capital budget is funded inside the budget.
Yeah, a good portion of it is, because a good portion of it's the building we're sitting in. So that was
That's an
definitely
override.
excluded.
Yeah,
That was an
so the
override.
funding's all set for the overs.
Yeah, but
That's my
I'm
point.
just saying, not all of it.
80%, 90%?
Probably 85-ish.
One-ish?
85.
85-ish.
Sorry, I was reading his lips, so.
Go with 85-ish.
Okay.
So, to get to that number, we looked at three things. What do we not have any control over in that budget? What do we have control over? And then, okay, if all that, come up with that number and the budget fails, then what? So, the four areas where we have no control. First one, Chapter 70. So, Pentucket, you'll see there, and we'll talk about this quite a bit, we received 0.51% increase in Chapter 70 funds, which means we got an additional $68,640 from Massachusetts for fiscal year 24. The Operational Services Division, you've heard me talk about that before. So that was the 14% increase. That 14% increase was done not by legislators, it was done by OSD. They set the rates. So that basically, well, not basically, what that said was private schools that take in students who have special education, they can increase their tuitions by 14%, which means any students we have going out of district, we need to factor in 14%. The Student Opportunity Act, we'll talk about that in more detail. $1.5 billion and how much Kentucky's getting out of that. Health insurance, we don't control those rates. Being held harmless, we don't control that rate. And inflation and utility costs, we don't control that either. Many of these apply to you. They all apply to you because you end up paying a big chunk of money, but even within your town. So let's talk about Chapter 70. You'll see it here, but this is one of the big things that the state celebrated, that's been going on. They had a webinar today, this morning, about how much money the state has committed to Chapter 70, to increasing Chapter 70 money to school districts across the state because education is a priority. Okay, so, you heard me say this before. 0.51% was our increase. $68,640. I very much like to think about things in terms of teachers. That's about one teaching position. That was our increase. Of course, that's if everything was at 0% cost increases and all that, which we'll get to that as well. So what occurred to me, I was curious to know, if I took the 11 wealthiest towns in Massachusetts, so the 11 wealthiest per capita, what were they getting? So the number in the parentheses is where they rank in terms of wealth. On the top is Pentucket and Triton. Pentucket and Triton are there together because we're the most similar, and this is actually a slide we're going to be using with our government legislators to just go over some of this. I was curious, I looked at this. So I'm going to read this because I think it's really important. You recognize the names of some of these communities. So I'm going to read this. Pentucket, 0.51% increase. Triton, 0.74% increase. There's our neighbor. By the way, I believe Amesbury, is 0.59. Weston, the wealthiest in the state, 7.73% increase. Dover, the second wealthiest, 9.75%. Sherborne, third, 9.2%. Brookline, 1.33. Newton, 4.66. Lexington, 16.94% increase, sixth wealthiest. Concord, 3.11. Westwood, 17.68. Carlisle, 1.26. Wellesley, 1.30. And Sudbury, 6.55. Just to be clear, the smallest one on there is Wellesley. That's 2.5 times ours. That would be better than what we have. Groveland, by the way, is 103rd in terms of ranking. West Newbury's 127, Merrimack 132. There are 351 municipalities in Massachusetts, and that's how we rank out. So those are the 11 wealthiest. So the what if game. So what if, instead of getting the most of what was on that chart, the lowest, what if we just got the average of the 11 wealthiest? Right? We just got the average. That would be 7.23% is the average increase that the 11 wealthiest municipalities received in Chapter 7 money. That would be almost $1 million for us. But we didn't get $1 million. We get $68,640, or 0.51%. We don't control this. This is what gets sent to us. So let's just keep it local. So here's the wealthiest. Let's just look at the Cape Ann League. Here we go. Pentucket, 0.51. Triton, 0.74. Amesbury, 0.59%. Now, I'm going to go to the next town, Newburyport, and I cannot distinguish the difference between Newburyport. I mean, I know where the borders are, I know where they are, I know their school colors and stuff, but I really don't know what's different there than Amesbury, Pentucket, and Triton. But Newburyport, 20.9% increase. Linfield, 19% increase. Georgetown, one of our neighbors, 0.65. North Reading, 0.93. Hamilton, 3.33. Rockport, 1.13. Manchester, Essex, 1.11. And Ipswich, 2.79. Now, I know these communities aren't anywhere close in wealth to the ones we just looked at. These numbers, aside from two of them, are much, much smaller. But still, what if? What if we just got the average of what was given to the Cape Ann League teams? That ends up being 4.7%, or $629,000, $102. But we didn't get that. We got 0.51%, or $68,640. That's what we got. So did we really get $68,640 from Massachusetts? In Chapter 70, yes. But no, we are not collecting that from the state. Because there's other factors that go into a regional school district. Our total from the state compared to last year, we are actually getting negative $8,570 from the state. So fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24, negative $8,570. You may have heard about inflation. You may have heard about the cost of utilities. You may have heard about all these other costs that are going up. What didn't go up is how much money we got from the state. During this year, where there were record surpluses, we all got money back, and we're hearing about all these other factors that we're really focusing on education. There may be some. Remember I said at the beginning, we focus on all children, not some children, and ignoring others. That's the philosophy we use here. So if I seem a little bit annoyed and upset, I am. Because this is not treating all municipalities with respect. It's treating some in one way and others in another. So you can see the numbers, 68,640 is Chapter 70, regional transportation, 4,247, but we lose $50,000 in school choice, and we lose $14,413 in charter school tuition. So let's take a look at how the state's been doing in terms of funding our budget since 2010. So we started out at 42.1%. You can look at the chart here. If it's red, it's bad. If it's green, it's good. I count 1, 2, 3 greens. I will point out, if you look at one of the green numbers, it's always followed by a really big red number. Now, I will concede, and I showed this to us, talked about this last time, our student population definitively decreased. Like, we have dropped, but not in the last 3 years. We've gone up. So is that negative $8,000? Keep in mind that we have more students this year than we did last year. So since the fiscal year 11, the state's bailed out 10.53%. And that's on net school spending. That means over that time period, if you flat factor just 2.5% in inflation every single year, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you get 14 years. 2.5 times 14, right? Big number. That's not just negative 10.53%. That's negative 10.53 plus the negative 2.5 every single year on a below inflation number. So it's not a small out. Like, this is staggeringly bigger and more significant than what even that number shows. So how do you feel about it? How does that make you feel? Right? So I'll tell this quick story. I'm sure I told this before, but when I came back home in 2018, 2019 into this position, I was sitting with Dr. Jarvis. He oversees student services and special education for our school district. And I was trying to wrap my head around how special education is being funded, because it just didn't look like we could continue on this pathway. And it wasn't, I think it was October, November. I don't know his name. He was the mayor of Amesbury at the time. But we had a meeting with Senator DeZoglio. It was a very good meeting. And we were just talking about this whole issue. And he just came in and said, listen, for our town, something has to happen. We can't keep going down this pathway. We can't afford to keep doing this, or else we're not going to be able to hire fire department personnel, police department personnel, Department of Public Works. We're not going to be able to fix our roads. We have no money. So every single year, I have heard, we know the formula's wrong. We got to fix it. We know the formula's wrong. So everyone knows this is a problem. But now I'm going to read to you what's happened each year. I know this is tedious, but bear with me. It's therapeutic a little bit. 2018 to 2019, there was no change. 19 to 20, no change. 20 to 21, no change. 21 to 22, no change. 22 to 23, no change. Nothing has happened. Nothing. So this is a known problem, especially in our region. You just saw those numbers. Nothing has happened. So, begs this question. Why do the top 11 wealthiest municipalities get a higher percentage increase than Groveland, West Newbury, and Merrimack? Right? It's a very reasonable question to ask. It's based on a formula, right? Kathy, I know you've asked about this formula. Has anybody else here taken the class? No, you can take a class and tell you about the formula. So this is why. No, we don't know. Nobody knows. If you aren't doing it wrong, you aren't doing it wrong if no one knows what you're doing. So here's the thing about the formula. There's factors in there you can verify. And there's factors in there you cannot verify. Now, I know you all work in municipalities, and I work in a regional school district. I will tell you, we get documents, we get things from the state, and guess what? Sometimes there's mistakes. But when there's a formula that we can't verify some of the information, how do we know if they're not making a mistake? How do we know that there's something in there that's not accurately capturing what's happening in our communities? Well, who's checking that? Who's overseeing OSD to say, hey, you can't put 14% out there? What's going on? Like, this is really perplexing. So again, how does that make you feel? Like, and there's so basically, for the last 5 years, I come up here, I do my whole thing, because I'm giving the number the state gives us, and I tell you, hey, here's how we're doing academically. Look, we're doing great academically. We've been doing really well. We've got a curriculum in there, students progressing. I think we were well behind in the Cape Ann League, and we are now in the middle and moving well beyond. That's where we should be. But that's not sustainable at 0.51%. So let me go on to the factor number 2 that we don't control. There's OSD. So I'll update you there. OSD, we felt pretty good that there was going to be additional funds coming from the governor's supplemental budget. They knew this was a problem. They knew we couldn't handle it. It was an absurd amount of money for a lot of districts. We are not so confident anymore that that's going to happen. There's a lot of talk about they're potentially only looking to pay if you, this fiscal year, experience a 25% or higher increase compared to last fiscal year. Let me just help you understand how things work here at Pentucket. We build programs inside of our school districts so children can stay within the school. Not because it's cheaper, not because it's more expensive one way or the other, because it's the right thing to do. These children are in our communities. They should be part of our communities. So if you have children who are out and then they come in, like your number decreases. And so you're not going to be 25% more. It still doesn't change the fact that you brought children in, you should have more money now, and you're still paying 14% additional on the kids who are going out. That doesn't change. Student Opportunity Act, you hear about this also. The 2 things you've heard about, or you're reading, you've heard about Chapter 70 money, all this new money's coming in, like this huge infusion of money. We already killed that horse a long time ago. We know that's not happening. Student Opportunity Act, $1.5 billion. Pentucket's share of that is $58,000. Or, again, I like to talk in terms of teachers, that is not even one teacher. So that's our cut. Health insurance, 8 to 10% increase. That's on our plans. We're on GIC. So those plans, depending on what plan you went, was somewhere between 8 and 10%. If you're an employee, if you're a retiree, it went up 2.1%. So up 2.1% I can deal with. That's all right. Here's your chart. So this is actually from, you can see it up there, the Tri-County Superintendent, so that includes Brookline. Everyone is really angry about this, and if you're planning a budget, you can see why. So if you're out of district tuitions in the millions, and you've been averaging about 2% every year, and then all of a sudden this year, this OSD organization just said, yeah, we're going to give you increase everything 14%. Okay. That's what that chart looks like. I'm just telling you that is not okay. I think you can see that from the chart. So I have to explain this. I think most of you will understand the concept. Everyone's familiar with the shell game. You hide it, you move it around, you do all that stuff. So just want to make sure this is super clear. Because sometimes what happens when we're in rooms with other superintendents, we start to point the finger and say, well, they're getting all this money. They're getting $3 million Student Opportunity Act money. Okay. Well, here's my example. If a district's budget, a municipality's budget, so let me be clear, when the money comes into a regional district, we have to spend it on this district. And money comes into a municipality, not so much. So if a district's budget is $65 million, and they get $3 million to the Student Opportunity Act, right, that's great. The budget should be $68 million for that school district. It is not. Because that municipality knows that money is coming in. That $3 million comes in, and the municipality can say, hey, you're not going to get $68 million. We're going to give you $1 million. We're going to take the $2 million, and we're going to pave our roads. We're going to pave Locust and Orchard. We're going to pave those streets. We're going to put in new water lines. So they don't give the full $3 million to the schools. So I don't look at my peers and say, hey, you're flush, because they're not. And this happens everywhere. So when you look at states that do lotteries, I was saying last night, obviously I was in North Carolina before, there's North Carolina Educational Lottery. That makes me feel sick hearing that because I don't like to associate children and gambling. I think that's a bad combination. But they would brag, hey, we've given billions to education over the years. No, you haven't. You gave billions to the counties. You gave billions to the municipalities. Like the municipalities are giving it to the towns. So it's really a funding mechanism for those municipalities. So if you get all this money, it's great. Like the municipality's ecstatic because now they have more that they can do. They just need to make sure they're increasing your bottom line. Held harmless. You've heard this from me before. All those wealthier districts that were up there in Pentucket, we're all held harmless, so we get $30 per student. That's our increase. But just, of course, you need to remember, our increase overall in Chapter 7 is 0.51, and the average increase was 7.3% for the wealthier communities, so if they're getting $30 on top of that, they're doing much better than we are. So just some basic math. You all in your towns are going to deal with this, utilities and inflation. You're going to buy something now, it's a lot more expensive. So you have an inflation rate of 9.1%. It's expense. Utilities of 15 to 25%. That's an expense. Although I did read an article that natural gas is coming down this morning, right? So we'll see how far that comes down. OSD, 14%. That's an increase in expense. Chapter 70 increase, 0.51%. I've said that number a lot. The most a municipality can increase their tax, 2.5%. So when you look at the red numbers and you look at the green numbers, you'll notice, even in basic math, big numbers are bigger than small numbers. So you can't take that green and cover the red. So what can we control? Those are the things we have no control over. So the district, we can control positions, transportation, materials and supplies, maintenance costs, OPEB and stabilization, extracurriculars, athletics, and clubs. So you remember last time we talked about the class sizes, we had a lot of the elementary that were in the red. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to do a qualifier on this slide, and before we put it out, I'll change that number. But last year's shortfall, like we always get this question, are we going to have an override? If we approve an override this year, will you have an override next year? That's always the question. And the answer you always get is, we don't know. Like, we don't know how much money the state's going to give. Like we were talking earlier, Groveland and Merrimack have been getting killed by the state and the state formula, but 8 or 9 years ago, West Newbury was getting killed by the state formula. So hard to say. But when you look at those numbers, what they were, 1.34 million versus 1.67 million, had the override passed last year, you're going to be looking at about $300,000 shortfall, so may not have needed an override. Except for, there's not 1.67 million anymore. Because we just had to add in some students who are coming to us new special education on Friday, and Greg verified this weekend. So so when we had the $1.34 million shortfall, that was a cut of 20.6 teaching positions, or the equivalent thereof. The school committee offset that by raising fees, doubling fees of athletics before and after schools, took a cap off of athletics, and also we added $250,000 in stabilization, and then the rest was in teacher cuts. This year, this budget is looking to add 8 teaching positions back. All of those teaching positions that are being added back would have been cuts from last year. Not all of the positions, but those 8 would be positions that were cut last year. And they include a lot of elementary teaching, a lot of elementary teachers, an art teacher, 1.5 art teachers, a nurse. And then you also have an HR coordinator, 2.5 special education teachers. That's nothing we can't, we have to have those positions. You can't not have those positions. A percussion contract's included in there, library media aides, curriculum and literacy coordinator, that's currently funded under ESSER. We also are bringing back the 9 coaches and 7 teams that were cut last year and reinstating the athletic cap at $1,500 per family. So that's what's in this year's budget in terms of adding. Other things that we can control, so transportation, material supplies, and maintenance. So the transportation, we hear this all the time. We have control over this. A regional school district is only required to provide transportation for students who are outside of 1.5 miles. That's it. So anybody inside that 1.5 mile range, we do not have to provide transportation. And we only get money back on regional transportation on what's outside that 1.5 miles. So we can make decisions, the school committee can make a decision saying, hey, you know what? We're gonna cut all these buses, except for we're gonna have 2 buses for the entire district. Yeah, your kid's gonna be on there for an 1.5 hours, but hey, we're gonna save $1.2 million by doing this. Yeah, it's doable. I don't know if that's the impact people want, but it's doable. Materials and supplies. So when I first arrived, we had a curriculum problem, and our photocopy machines were getting a workout. There were no textbooks. We had textbooks. There were no workbooks. There was nothing for the kids to take home. We corrected that. We brought in curriculum. We aligned curriculum vertically, horizontally. We used a very, I say, predictive way to create success for students. So we can certainly cut back on that. We can say, hey, we don't want to do that stuff anymore. Let's go back to the way it was. We got some new curriculum. Let's just stick with that and see what happens. Then maintenance costs. So if you have a floor scrubber or something like that and it breaks, do we fix it? We don't have to. We can make cuts. When the middle school and the high school, before they were demolished, a year or 2 before they were demolished, there's something broken there. We actually did reduce our maintenance costs those 2 years in the budget, because we figured if something broke in one of those buildings, it's going to be down on the ground in a pile and it might be less than 2 years anyway. So if we had to fix it, we fix it. If not, you just let it be. OPEB and stabilization. So OPEB is going to be a term some people don't understand. OPEB is a fund that we need to put money into, and it's there in case the organization fails. And that, if the organization fails, then any retirees can still continue to receive benefits. So I forget what the percentages we're supposed to have, Greg.
It's not a percentage, it's an amount. 62 million is what we're supposed to.
We only need 62 million, so we're well on our way. So we need 62 million in there. They keep on changing the year of when it's going to be there, but we're supposed to put 62 million in stabilization. When we have our E&D, that can get moved to stabilization, and the school committee per policy can move stabilization around to offset certain expenses. So last year they used $250,000, and that $250,000 saved 4 teaching positions. And of course, it's extracurricular activities. So athletics, clubs after school, all other extracurriculars. If we're short on cash or whatever, the school committee can decide, hey, we can't have these sports. We need to get rid of these clubs. It's too expensive. Whatever it is, they can do. Already this year, we have DECA is it next Friday, Mr. Conway? Oh my goodness, sorry. Our DECA, our students, high school students compete in a DECA competition. That does some, there's management stuff, there's problem solving, but they go there, they're dressed up in their suits, they sit down around tables, they do presentations, they get asked questions by judges. Last year, we were able to help fund that a little bit. This year, it's all on the parents, and I think each kid had to pay about $640 a piece for the 2-day competition. It's just, that was a decision we had to make, and that is unfortunate. So then there's this other part. So if the budget fails, where do we go with it? And the answer to that is, we're going to have a big discussion on this at our March 28th school committee meeting, because it's, the school committee, I want to get their feedback. We want to hear what they have to say. It falls on me to make that final decision of what actually has to happen. And right now, my job is always going to be what's the least impactful on the children. So right now, when I look at that, all right, what's the transportation we're not required to provide? All right, so if we do the 1.5 miles, that's great. I get horrified thinking about that, because I think about Main Street going up by Page. We're going to have kids walking up Main Street, going around a corner on a nice icy day in the morning. That seems insane. But looking at that is definitely a factor. Once they're in the building, what's the best way to protect what's happening in the classroom? So transportation is certainly one area. Getting rid of the athletic caps, potentially cutting more of the athletic teams, obviously using stabilization funds. This modification of the middle school and high school schedule, that is one of the things we're looking at. I'll just tell you one of the things we've considered. Mr. Seymour worked with me on this, Mr. Conant, Ms. Simone, and Ms. Funk. We've looked at all sorts of periods, Mr. Conway as well. We've looked at block scheduling 4x4. We've looked at 8-period blocks, so 8A, B-day blocks. We've looked at the 7-period that we have, the 7-period we had. And it looks like one of the modifications might be dropping down, instead of 7 classes, kids take 6. So if you have children in middle school or high school, or had them, this is something you want to think about. If we have to reduce it down to 6, then we reduce it down to 6. We all know math, English, science, social studies, there's 4. There's one other one that every student just about takes, the 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, usually 11th grade as well, and that's world languages. So there's your 5th. That leaves you with one other elective. There's something else that you're required to take. You have PE and wellness. So there's something else a lot of students take. They have it every single day. And we built the entire middle of this area for them. What is this called? The arts. So all of a sudden, instead of doing art every single day, you're at every other day. Because that's all that can fit in. And obviously, when you do that, you're looking at what we'd have to cut. If the budget fails, you're cutting teachers. And that's where he's going. That's where the options that we're looking at. And the question comes up, well, why are you focusing on middle school, high school? And if you recall from last time, the answer to that question is because there is nothing left at elementary. If we remove a teacher from any of those situations, class sizes rocket. And there's nothing we can do about that. Here at the middle school, high school, you have a lot more flexibility, but we'll see how those things go. So again, I brought this slide up last time. You can read it, but just common things that sometimes people say. We need state to fix this, let's organize. Yeah. Just remember that slide. No change, no change, no change, no change, no change. I'm in my 5th year, and that's what's happened every 5th year. Too happy, just cut administrators. We talked about that. It's just a scare tactic. No, it's not a scare tactic. This is basic math. This is a combination of math and educational experience saying, okay, here's the best thing we can do for the kids given what we have. What about blank in the budget book? Why do they need that? Sure. I mean, it's a good question. You can ask Greg. I'll just point out, if you're getting into a heated debate with Greg, first of luck, but if you're fighting over $3,000, this is a budget of over $50 million. So if you're hyper-focused on that $3,000, I would just suggest, yes, have that conversation with Greg, but remember the big picture is $50 million, not $3,000. They're going to need to adjust their budget. Yep, we've done that. Now, remember, we started off with right around just over $3.1 million when we did this. And last year, when it failed, we definitively adjusted our budget. And obviously, not in a very good way. This happening too quickly. Why don't we know about this? I can't even. It is happening quickly. If you didn't know about this, it's information's out there. So the rest of this process, the timeline. Right now, so those numbers actually went out today, right?
I left the envelopes on their desk and informed them this morning by email.
Okay, so they're certified by our treasurer. That was today. You got it through the town administrators got through email. The 16th. So next Monday, I'll be talking about the budget at Sweetser School at 6:30. Next Wednesday, I'll be talking about the budget at Bagnell at 6. I know I'm talking to West Newbury, Ms. Buteri, I think it's the week after. March 28th is that school committee meeting where we're going to talk about what are the possible things we look to remove. Say it again.
Sorry, just scheduling. Yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry. April 20th. Those dates cannot be correct because today's the 8th. So that's going to be, Bagnell's going to be on The 15th. See, remember I did this last time? It's a good exercise to make sure the students are paying attention. So it is that. It is March 15th, next Wednesday. It's definitely next Wednesday, and it is next Monday. So that should be the March 13th and March 15th. The 28th is the school committee meeting. The 24th. So that's the town meeting, right? So if there is an override that's needed in your town, that's the first place where the town can decide whether or not to put the override on the ballot. And then May 1st is the second time that people would have an opportunity to say, yes, we want that override, or no, we do not. And this, I think, was just a very important thing to point out. Whether people like this or don't, and I think you can tell by the way my tone, the way I present this, I'm not ecstatic about what's happening to us as a school district, nor am I happy what's happening to us as individual towns. It's absolutely infuriating. But this is just the reality of it. If one of the four of us do not pass this budget, sorry, no, there's four. There's 3 towns and then there's 3. Well, of the four groups, if one of the four of us, if everyone doesn't pass, one of us is in trouble. And that is a reality. I'm not advocating to pass it. That is a factual reality. I believe Carol, Rebecca, and Angus, and FinComs, and Selectmen would understand that concept. So I understand that there was a meeting with chiefs of police recently, and Chief Shears actually stood up and said to the chiefs, listen, this Chapter 7, it is not, yes, it impacts the school, but it is not impacting just the schools. It impacts me. I'm in a small community. If I lose an officer or 2 officers, or I might lose my entire force. So this is not a problem. Yes, we're dealing with this as a school district, but we are all connected. Fire departments, DPWs, they are all connected to this. And I think that's something people had not understood very well. And I think when he said that, people started making the connections to, good point. That's right, because if they need 150,000, where are they going to go to get it? The last thing I would just say is we'll keep things up to date on the PawtucketBudget.com. I'll point out, look at the dates up there are correct. 16th of May, was that a Friday and a Sunday or something like that? Well, I'm not doing much of anything. So the 13th and the 15th, but the www.PawtucketBudget.com is where all of this budget information is. There's FAQ. There's different things that you can find up there. But we wanted to make sure people had a place to go if there was a question about specific information, that they could go right there to get the answers to their questions. So that is all I have. But questions? Yeah.
Is this slide deck available on that website?
Yes. Actually, yeah, it'll be up there by tomorrow morning. It'll be up there. Absolutely. Yep.
In your research, did you notice? Hi. Did you notice if by any chance regional school districts were more adversely affected than standalone school districts in the allocation of Chapter 70 funds? Because that's one of my pet theories.
Yep.
That the formula, which is stupid anyway, please put that on television.
It's on.
It's awful. It doesn't make sense, and I'm a mathematician economist. But the way it's applied to the regional school district makes no sense. They apply it individually in each town and then add it all together. And
Yeah,
it
so
doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So
West Newbury gets capped, and I think my working theory is that because they do it wrong, the Chapter 70 is meant to fill the gap between what we're being asked to pay and where they want us to be, right? The foundation budget, or whatever you may call it. And if we're losing and losing, it's got to be in the errors in that. And I agree with you. It's near impossible for me to trace. I spent hours on it. I understand to a point, but I feel like I understand it well enough to say it absolutely does not work for a regional school district, and we absolutely should go to the state and make a case of that.
Yep,
No
so,
matter what we do here, let's fund our budgets, but
Yeah.
going forward, we need to do something about this.
so I actually have two things on that. One, I actually have a spreadsheet, and I can share with you. We're a regional district, right? So we participate in the Mass Association of Regional Schools. And I have a spreadsheet of all the regional schools. Just if you email me, I'll get it to you. And it shows, when you look at all the 4 factors, let me go back to this. When you look at, no, not that one. This one right here. It shows those 4 factors for every single regional school district. Now, I will tell you, one of the kind of hot things in all this, and this is Kathy that asked, so so one of the interesting pieces about the regional school districts, yes, Pentucket is not doing well. Triton is not, they're not doing well. The VOTEC schools average around us, average about $1.2 million on that bottom line, but we're negative 8,570. Do they need it? Yes! Of course they do. You can't run an auto tech class, you can't run robotics, we heard robotics, you can't run all those things without that money. You have to have that money. There is one thing, however, I will point out, that we have an expense, an extraordinary expense that we have that they don't. Anybody? Yes. Our out-of-district costs, they do not deal with those. Right. Yes. Yep. So there's a huge disparity there. Like, that's a massive expense we have that doesn't go to the text. But it's, again, I don't know against the formula. Like, how do you verify that? So it's just a bizarre. But I have it. If you ask, it has every single regional district with what their actual fiscal year 23 to fiscal 24 with those those are 4 areas we get money with what that ends up being. Yep, I'll get it. Easy. Anybody have anything else? Anybody here have anything? Any questions? Everyone?
When do you expect to get clarification on from the OSD and the 14% that the state will pony up? Is it going to be before?
No.
Like, even like the towns presented with a potential override?
Yeah, no, so Greg's sitting here laughing. So optimally, yes, it would. I think right now, it's March 3rd, they were going to start the deliberations on this. The House was, and I got an email about it. Actually, House is next week, and then after they go through theirs, the Senate will do theirs. Do I think it'll be there in time for April 24th? I doubt it. But what happens is this. If that money does come after the election, Greg just sends out a letter to the town saying, hey, we're reducing what you have by this. But it doesn't change the fact that the bigger number is what we're facing to start.
Right, but if we approve the budget and the money comes back, that ultimately will go back to the towns if the override fails, and the amount that the towns will have to pony up becomes less, correct? If you get money down the road.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's an important.
Yep, absolutely. So if override passes, and this is how much money the towns are paying, and it's based on what we have, and then the state says, hey, here's some more money we're going to give you, we're running off of a budget. Very different municipality. Municipality can do things completely, but in a regional district, this is our budget, so if more comes in, it's just a phrase, it lessens how much each town has to pay.
Dr. B,
Yes.
what happens with the academic support and the Excel programs in the middle school and the high school for the students if you go down to the 6 classes? So we've already covered what those 6 classes would be.
Sure.
These are IEP and 504 programs. What would happen with those?
So those students, they're required to receive that, right? So in there, if you're a special education student, it's in your plan to have those classes. We are required to provide you with that, so that will be one of your classes. So.
But what would they be taking away? Because all the other classes are mandated, you know, your core classes, your gym, your specials.
Oh, sure.
So what would, I know theater is not.
I mean, so in elementaries, as you know, they run into this all the time, right? What we try to do at the elementary level is you try to avoid taking a student out of a time when they're doing math, or you're trying to do literacy. But sooner or later, the student's going to come out. If you have to take them out of English, then you just have to, because you can't take everybody out at the same time. So it's either that situation where it's randomly pulled throughout the day, or it's a class, and it's one of their 6. So band art would not be an option. Again, that's nothing that's definitive, but mathematically and just what we're looking for an impact, that seems.
Well, if the override doesn't pass,
Sure.
that's something that's most likely going to happen.
Yep. I mean, we're problem solvers. We try to come up with the most creative way to make a situation work. Well, I see everybody's smiling, everybody's happy. It's been a wonderful evening. But I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. I know it's,
I have a question.
yeah, of course.
I really appreciate you doing this because, a lot of this stuff I did not know. Can you explain the charter school money? Do charter schools get Chapter 70 money? And how the charter school tuition affects West Newbury?
Sure.
Or our district?
Yeah, sure. Greg's right behind you. Greg will feel that one. I'm just a face, I'm not the brains.
I never really understood how that works and where.
Yes, good question.
Okay, it is on. Actually, it works in kind of a combination. They get some money directly from the state, and then they take money away from us. I think next year it's projected to be a little over $650,000 that they take out of our money. In other words, they charge us for some of our students going to the charter school. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Kids going to charter schools?
No, we don't actually. I can tell you exactly how many, the only one we have really is River Valley. And to be able to go to the school, you have to live in that town or abut that town. And the only one that really abuts us Newbury is Newburyport. But I can tell you exactly how many kids we have baked in out in charter school. We have 32.
So why are we getting charged that much money?
Oh, please don't make me ask questions. It's the state. I have no idea.
600,000.
That's how much they charge
Charter
us.
schools are like,
No unions, no special ed. Yeah, they can just do whatever they want.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well,
Can I ask one more question? Sorry, I'm loud enough in the back. So last year in the override field, I was actively involved in Merrimack, and we were able to quantify how much it would cost the average homeowner based upon that $1.34 million. In Merrimack, it would have cost the average homeowner like less than $20 a month to approve the budget that didn't pass last year. And I think in the other towns, even Groveland, it was even less, if memory serves me correct. Is there a way to calculate that information based upon the coverage budget and get that out into the community? Because you hear that everyone's, no, trust me, I'm paying more, I've done everything.
Sure, yeah.
But it's so catastrophic, and for less than $20 a month, we can all give up a cup of coffee at Dumps or whatever. It just is mind-blowing to me. So I feel like we need to get that information out, but I'm not the one to do it.
yeah, sure. So we actually can't put that information out yet because we don't know that the towns will do it override. As I think Merrimack's just going to come up with the money. And Groveland's just coming up with the money. That's the best news ever. No, they actually, what we need to know is what the number is actually going to be. So each town needs to decide, this is the number. And once we know what that number is, yes, we can put another calculator or something out where it says, all right, this is about what your home value is. Here's about what your increase would be on a monthly basis. Absolutely. And that doesn't come until, when do we?
They have to vote at least 35 days before the election, so March.
So sometime by the end of this month, we'll be able to have that up. All right?
Dr. B, one quick question.
Yes.
So something that has not been discussed, which no offense to you, I completely understand why, but the projected potential negative outcome of if overrides don't pass or budget doesn't get fully funded and all of that. What do you, as our district leader, what do you worry about for the overall well-being of the kids? Is it deeper than just reduction in classes and bigger class sizes and all of that? If it's, and I know it depends on what things get taken away and reduced and all of that, but would you agree with me that it's pretty concerning?
So my job, of course, is to make sure that the students have the best opportunity no matter what the situation is, right? I would say when I look at Pentucket's history and I look at what I walked in on, my biggest concern is at the early elementary levels, that we're not getting the foundational skills as quickly as we should, because when you delay those foundational skills, everything else takes a step back. So that definitively is probably my biggest concern is the young ones, and if transportation ends up going away, I really worry about little kids getting to school. I know their parents will probably take them. I will have a lot of angry adults. At that point, it's just no longer my problem, right? This is the way the vote went, no longer my issue. Once the kids are there, we got you. From a secondary programmatic, you want to have a rich curriculum. When you do not have the means to provide that rich curriculum, that will have an impact. What we're trying to learn right now from admissions counselors is what is that impact and how will that make us look? And it could be that, yeah, not a big deal. It's not that important. I suspect, though, and I made this comments at a school committee meeting, I think, wherever it was, that when you take away certain electives, a student looks more monotone than diverse in their experiences and what they've done. So when you reduce that pool, kids are making tough choices. They'll take the absolute minimum of what's required because they want to have those other experiences. And because they're restricted what they can, they just don't anymore. So does that make them less appealing to colleges and universities? A lot has changed with colleges and universities. The test scores are optional in so many places. It used to be, it doesn't really matter what you take. You go ahead and you get a certain number on SAT or the ACT, you're good to go. Now, though, they're looking at the whole piece. What are you doing outside? Like, community service is a big deal. When you talk to admissions counselors, it's like, hey, this year we needed more of this. So that's what we're looking for in applications. And if we can't provide this, our kids are at a huge disadvantage.
Also, wouldn't it be the same that if you can't provide organized outside of school, collective clubs, teams, groups, that the same potential negative tough choices for those kids who therefore don't have something to do are left with?
So you're asking if it says Justin Bartholomew, German Club, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the yearbook. If that just says 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 are gone, like, what's going on here? Like, yeah, I think that's a very legitimate thing. Or we probably, I would think, knowing the value of those, say we are going to offer those, but it's going to cost, there's going to be a fee associated with it. So if we can't afford the stipend of something like, if someone's getting $3,500 to run the German Club, okay, well, if you want to join the German Club, we need at least 30 of you, and it's going to be $12 a piece. So I think that's a way around to still get that experience, although now it's kind of getting weird because you're paying for that experience. I think there was a scandal that happened with people paying for things to get into college not too long ago. That involved some famous movie stars. So, thank you everybody. I think you all know Greg is available all around. Don't show up on the 16th or 18th, or you can. It's the 13th or 15th. The 13th again at Sweetser at 6:30. And the 15th, which is Wednesday at Bagnell at 6. Thank you all again. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.